So adventure. Man, every single human on this planet, I'm convinced, wants adventure in their life. Whether you feel like you're an adrenaline junkie or not, I mean, it's all over our movies. You can think about our biggest movies. Endgame is one giant adventure of what? Of superheroes, you could say that. You could say the Infinity Gauntlet. You could say Thanos. Star Wars, we love Star Wars. It's the adventure of space. Even Twilight, an adventure of a guy and a girl, or a werewolf and a vampire, whatever. Inside Out, the crazy adventure of a woman's mind. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. Like, we seek adventure. We love it in our movies. How about in our lives? You know, if you look at it a certain way, so much of what we do is just us racing and fighting for adventure. There's two big ones in my mind. I think we all seek the adventure of relationships, and we all seek the adventure of success. Where all of us, there's something inside of us that wants that fairy tale boyfriend or girlfriend. We want to have that exciting, bubbling feeling that's not our guts, but that's like emotion. When we see that guy or girl, or we go on that first date, we want sparks to fly. We're just, the idea of, it's like, I would rather not graduate and have a girlfriend rather than graduate without a girl. Like that, we can get that in our minds. It's just how big it is. But it's this big adventure. It's this big adventure. Hey, I'm not the only one that's thought that before. Or the adventure of success. I mean, why are you at school? Isn't it just because there's this adventure of success and getting a job and getting a career and making a great paycheck, maybe making a difference, but like, it's this success. We're here because we're driven by this adventure of seeking success. It's so much a part of who we are. We long for it. We want it. We desire our lives to be exciting, to have something special, to have meaning. And yet, I'm here to tell you tonight, that no matter what adventure you seek, if it's not the adventure of God, it will never fulfill you. It will never sustain you. It will never make you whole. Tonight, we're talking about the adventure of seeking God. The adventure of seeking God. Think about it this way. I'm going to ask you a question you usually don't like talking about, all right? How much do you weigh? No one said anything. That's probably appropriate. But how much do you weigh? We all have a weight. We all have a height. We all have a size. Let me ask you another question. You know all the physical attributes of yourself, right? We just took my son Camden turned 15 months old today. So we took him to his 15-month appointment yesterday. He's grown a couple inches. He's super healthy, praise God. But we know exactly how much he weighs and exactly how tall he is. How much does your soul weigh? How tall is your soul? How wide? Could you measure your soul? No, it's immeasurable. You can't measure it. It doesn't have dimensions. It doesn't have a weight. It's not physical. But there's something inside of us that we've been convinced of this lie that another physical person can fulfill our immeasurable soul. That a measurable success, a measurable human, like in a relationship, a measurable amount of money can fulfill our immeasurable soul. It's impossible. It's impossible. Let me ask you another question. How much does God weigh? How tall is God? How wide is God? No, He's immeasurable. The only thing that can fulfill your immeasurable soul is an immeasurable God. The only thing that can fulfill you, sustain you, give you purpose, give you peace, help you just have a thriving life where you feel secure, where you feel confident, where you don't have to race to just care about every little way the opposite sex looks at you, care about what your girlfriend looks like to the other girlfriend, or how much your boyfriend works out compared to the other boyfriend, or what degree you have, or what age you have. It's the constant rattle race of security and finding confidence and fulfillment. You don't have to worry about that stuff anymore if you have God. And if you fulfill your immeasurable soul with the only immeasurable being out there, God. You guys following me? Yeah. So tonight we're talking about the adventure of seeking God. And so let's look to Daniel. Let's look to Daniel. Toy, can I use your water bottle? So we're in Daniel, and if you go to Revelation and go backwards, you'll find it eventually. But in Daniel, We're gonna read a story here, and we're gonna read the second piece, and then jump to the first piece later on in our time together. So we'll read the first half of this chapter in a second. But Daniel's about to have this great adventure. Something incredible about to happen that we're going to read together. But just a little bit of context, right? Daniel's a Jew, and they lived in Jerusalem. And then the Persians and the Babylonians came in. They took over most of the known world. It's way before Rome or anything like that. And they took over Jerusalem, and they brought God's people to slavery up in Babylon, okay? And so then all these Jews are up in Babylon. They've been separated from their home. They've been separated from the temple where they worship God. And most of them went against the faith. And most of them decided, I'm going to abandon this God because he's back in Jerusalem. But a few continue to stand up for their faith, and Daniel was one of them. And Daniel, because of his faith, it says that he was a man of character, a man of integrity. He rose up to actually an extreme position in the Babylonian Empire. This foreigner almost basically became the vice president. And besides the king himself, he was the next in charge. And yet, something happens we'll read about in a second, and he gets in trouble because he went against this edict that was sent out. And we're about to jump in here on what the king is going to do to punish Daniel for going against this edict or this law that he made. So in Daniel chapter 6 and verse 16, it says, so the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. And the king said to Daniel, may your God whom you serve continually rescue you. What they would have, they would carve out this cave or this huge hole in the ground that you could put a rock over the top so the lions couldn't get out. And what they would do is that they would keep the lions just barely alive, that they would be insistently hungry and insistently starving. So if any meat or any living person came near within their reach, they would immediately kill them. And John, actually, later on in the chapter, we're not going to read it, someone else gets thrown in, and even before the person hits the ground, thrown in from the top, the lions are already on him. Because that's how close to death these lions are kept, and they're constantly starving. So there was a way to kill people, to savage animals. So he threw him into this lion's den. And in verse 17, it says, a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of the nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continuously, been able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I done any wrong before you, your majesty. And the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was found lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And skip down to verse 25. It says, then King Darius wrote to all the nations and people of every language in all the earth. May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and have reverence for the God of Daniel. It's this incredible adventure that Daniel gets to go on. And he gets thrown in the face of lions. I mean, it's terrifying. And yet he's there before lions, but because of his walk of God, God sends an angel. And I don't know if it looks like this, right? But the idea of a massive angel coming and just making a lion look like a tiny little kitty cat, right? Like, that's just, what an incredible sight. What an incredible thing to experience and to witness. It's this great adventure, this great kind of masterpiece of his walk with God that he got to experience. And God did the impossible. The crazy thing about Daniel's God is that it would be impossible to be thrown into these lions. Like, we think a lot of things nowadays are impossible. I don't know how many things you think of are more impossible than being around a bunch of hungry lions and not dying. Right? That's pretty impossible. Yet God, we serve a God that can make the impossible possible. And we serve a God that can even shut the mouths of lions. It's so incredibly powerful. I don't have my clicker. And so this is what I want to talk about today, is what adventure will God take you on? I don't think it has to do with lions. I really hope it doesn't have to do with, like actual real lions. But there is something some great thing God wants to do in your life. There's something that you think now, man, if that ever happened in my life, that would be impossible. If that ever happened in my life, I would be blown away. There's no way. Like, that's so out of the ordinary. That's so radical. I can never even see how that could come into being. Yet God can make it happen. Where will he take you? Like, what part of the adventure with God will be that thing where you just stop and you go, this is crazy? Because actually, I don't know what was more impossible in the story. If it was God shutting the mouths of lions, or if it was this king of all Babylon at the time. It was actually the Persians and the Medes had taken over Babylon. But if it was this king that didn't worship God, that didn't believe in God, that sent out a law that you have to worship Daniel's God. That's crazy. That part of Daniel's adventure brought the entire kingdom to worship God. I mean, it's just so insane. Where will God take you in 2020? What will God do in your life in this decade? And I promise, if you trust God with this adventure about where to go, it will be so much better than if you trust yourself and where you want to take you. The places, the things, like everything that can happen in your life, if you trust for God to lead you along the way, it will be so much greater. It will be so much better than if you trust where you want to take you. How do I know that? Because I don't know where or what, but I do know who you will be with if you trust God. And that's ultimately what it's all about, guys. It's not where will God take me? I got to figure it out. It's not what will happen when we get there. It's who you'll be with when you get there. It's who you'll be with when you arrive. That's one of the most beautiful things for me that I really felt with Toya as we were dating, and then as we were leading up to marriage, and as we got married. What I really felt was, you know what? It doesn't matter, right? It's kind of the marriage vows, right? It doesn't matter if I go in sickness or in health. It doesn't matter for poor or for riches. It doesn't matter where we'll live. It doesn't matter what hardships. It doesn't matter anything. As long as I'm with you, I know I'll be okay. As long as I'm with you, and I remember feeling that at the depths of my core, like as long as I'm with Toya, I know my life will be okay. But I know even more importantly, no matter what happens between Toya and I, even if at the very worst, like if one of us dies, oh my gosh, I'll still know I'll have God. And this is my encouragement to you guys, is instead of dreaming about where you want to be, and instead of dreaming about what you want to do in 2020, start dreaming about who you want to be with in 2020. Amen. And start dreaming about what this amazing God can do in your life in 2020. Because he's the God that created all the stars. He's the God that created the entire universe. But there's something in us where the God of all power, the God of all creation, we have somehow an amazing relationship with him, and sometimes we don't feel impacted. And somehow we have this God that's incredible, but we don't quite feel incredible. And we have this God that's all powerful, but we don't necessarily feel powerful. And it really goes back to where, if we're going on this adventure with him, or if we have some kind of false, almost half-baked relationship with him, instead of following him to the big dreams and the great adventure of what it is to live with him. Amen? So how did Daniel get there? Let's go to Daniel chapter 6 and verse 4 and look at the first half of this chapter. How did Daniel get to this epic adventure with God? Like, before the great, incredible things happened, where he saw this amazing miracle of an angel coming down, where he saw God's word get preached all across this entire kingdom, what led him to that point? And we'll see this here in Daniel chapter 6, starting verse 4. In verse 4, it starts out, and this is right after Daniel was appointed, he was about to be appointed to be over the whole kingdom. It says, at this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in the conduct of his government affairs. But they were unable to do so, because they could find no corruption in him. Because these next few words are biblical words. These next few words are only there because of his walk with God. Because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. Because where they were living, no one worshiped God. So the administrators and the satraps went up to in a group to the king and said, may King Darius live forever. the royal, all the different leaders, have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue this decree and put it into writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree into writing. What's crazy about all these things, we'll just pause here for a second. What's crazy about all these things, you can actually go back in history and read about King Darius. And nothing biblical and nothing spiritual. You can go find the historical records of King Darius. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't just a made-up story. It's truth. It's based in history. It happened. It's so crazy. But anyways, okay, verse 10. Now when Daniel learned what the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he closed the window so that no one could see him pray. It doesn't say that. 3 times a day, he decided that he was too scared to pray because what if they caught him, so he decided not to pray. 3 times a day, he decided that, you know what, he cared more about what people thought about him than about God. No, that doesn't say that either. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees before this huge window and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and they found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about this royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to you, any god or human being except you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? And he goes on to say how they were going to decide to throw Daniel into the lion's den. But what's crazy right here is for Daniel, before this great, incredible thing happened in his life, it started with the small things. It started with the small things. The biggest moments are built on many small moments. The biggest parts of our adventure come from the smallest parts of our adventure. And you've noticed this. You've noticed this. For all of you, I mean, a few of us have graduated from college. Most of us graduated from high school. You getting a degree from high school didn't just happen. It took, when you start school, it took 14 years, right, to get there? Or you graduated from college. I mean, count it as a small buildup of so many late night studying, so many tests, so many quizzes. The small things add up. You know, it's actually coming out in so many big books on habits that are like New York Times bestsellers that talk about how the smallest habits in our life, that it's like the reflex things that we don't even think about, actually control like 80% of our time. One of the easiest ones to tell that in is the habit of picking out your phone and looking at it. Just whenever you're in line, pick your phone, looking at it. Whenever you sit down, pick your phone, when you're on the toilet, pick your phone, looking at it. So whatever just the idea of picking up your phone and looking at it. And even though that just takes like that action, just takes like 2 seconds, it usually controls like the next 10 minutes of your life, or the next 30, or the next 3 hours of your life. And just that tiny little habit produces so much. It's huge. And it's this idea of not focusing on the big, but focusing on the small. It's the basics. And it's what we're digging into all semester. Our theme is rooted throughout the semester. And we're going down to rooting ourselves down into God and down into the basics. And one of my favorite stories about this is a story about one of the greatest coaches of all time, John Wooden. And besides Matthew Covington, who I asked to look this up earlier, does anyone else know what he coached and where he coached?
John Wooden.
Basketball? Where, honey? Do you remember? Anybody else? Okay, so John Wooden coached the UCLA basketball team, the greatest series of basketball teams of all time. It's never happened before what he did, and people say it will never happen again. In 12 years, NCAA basketball, he won 10 championships. In 12 years, he only lost 2 championships. That will never happen again. They say he's the greatest college coach of all time. And so he would get the main recruits of all time, like the best recruits of the high school years. Number 1 recruit, everyone in the nation is trying to get him to come. Everyone in the nation is trying to pull him there. He would get all these big shots that know they're going to go to the NBA, that know they're going to be big time above anybody else. And they would show up at John Wooden's door ready. He's going to show me the secrets, baby. He's going to teach me how to be an all-caliber, an all-star that's going to be the best NBA player of all time. They'd show up at practice, ready for all the secrets. And Coach Wooden would walk in. He'd go, everybody take off your shoes. I'm like, all right. They took off his shoes. Now put them back on. All right. They put them back on. And he said, you all did it wrong. For the next entire practice, the only thing we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to put on your shoes. And the entire first practice of the best coach of all time in NCAA basketball was based on the basics. And of course, he has all his reasons, right? That your shoes, if they ripped off and they could break your ankle, that if it gave you a rash, it would annoy you the entire game. If you didn't have the proper support, then you couldn't jump or run or walk there. He had all those things, but it was the idea of the basics, the small. The small things build champions. The small things build winners. And the small things with God build your relationship with God. So instead, if you want to have an incredible 2020, if you want to have an incredible decade, and to see the greatest things that have ever happened to you in your life, it's going to start with the small things.
That's right.
And with Daniel, he showed us before this huge miracle, it was the small habit of prayer. It was the small habit of prayer, and that was the building blocks for his relationship with God to take him to the most incredible places. And for him, it was actually illegal to pray. And he got thrown in lion's den for praying. Maybe it's not illegal nowadays, but have you ever felt like you weren't allowed to pray? And not like someone is going to arrest you, right, or kick you out of the class, but you felt socially like it wasn't the right thing to do in that moment. Or you feel like people would look at you weird if you prayed. Or why are you trying to do that right now, man? There's sometimes when you just do your silent prayer right before you eat and not get everyone's attention, where it just doesn't seem like socially proper. And guys, the truth is, even though it's legal in America to have a relationship with God on our college campuses, in our circles of Generation X or Z or whatever we are, it's almost not allowed. So, wait, why are we talking about Jesus? Wait, that's so funny. You mean like Jesus King, the Kanye album? No, actually, I want to talk about Jesus King. Why? Like, it just becomes this taboo subject. It becomes a thing that we want to hide. It becomes a thing we become embarrassed about. And maybe not like Daniel, it's illegal, but we definitely feel the social pressure of wanting to hide our walks with God. And for Daniel, it wasn't the big, boldest thing in the world in that moment. He had other moments like that. But it was just a small practice. It doesn't matter who's around me. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter who says what to me and what I'm supposed or not supposed to do. I will always pray to my God. And the adventure of seeking God is the greatest thing I could ever do, no matter what anybody says. And it brought him to such incredible places. You guys following me?
Yeah. Have you
ever felt like you weren't allowed to pray? And so this is what I want us to talk about, because a lot of us, prayer is such a basic. It's like tying your shoes. John Wooden, why are we tying our shoes? I came all the way. Luke Walton, who was just a coach for the LA Lakers until, LeBron showed up, and all that kind of stuff. Like, he was one of the guys that showed up and got tipped. Because not only did John Wooden say, man, I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes. Don't come in here trying to shoot a ball. You get on the ground and tie your shoes. He also said you need to cut your hair. And he had this long, flowing locks. You know what I'm saying? And he said, no, people on we all look the same, and no one gets special attention. So everyone cut your hair nice and short. And this discussion isn't about whether or not you should have long hair or not, so feel safe, Matthew Covington. but it's about the basics. And a lot of us know the basic of prayer. Oh, it's just one of those lessons about prayer again. Okay, zone out. But the truth is, for a lot of us, we know how to have shallow prayers. But I don't know if we know how to have meaningful prayers. Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot, right? It can be so easy just to make our prayers pleases and thank yous. Right? Where it's please this, please this, please this. And should we ask God for things? Yes, he wants us to ask him for things. I want my son to ask me for things. I want to give him great gifts. We should ask our God for things. And then it becomes thank yous. And should we thank our God for all the great things he's given us? Man, of course. But as soon as it becomes pleases and thank yous, if all I ever did to have a friendship with you was say please and thank you, we wouldn't have much of a friendship. And what would be it if you want, let me give you a tip, all your brothers. That special someone, that special sister that you like, when you're on a date with her, don't just say please and thank you the whole time. Because that will not be a good building block for a relationship. Can you imagine that? Hey, how was your day? Please, thank you for asking. It's just, you got to say something. You know what I mean? Well, thank you for talking to me. Well, how was your day today? Well, thank you for asking. Well, how's your day today? Well, thank you for caring enough about it to ask. Well, that would go nowhere. They would walk away and abandon the date, right? Like that. That's not a way to build a relationship. Yes, so many of us, like we were talking about at the beginning, feel this separation from God, feel like our walk with God doesn't have power, like our relationship with God isn't meaningful, doesn't fill us. But so much of it is just because of our conversation with God is stuck on shallow things. So what helps you? I know a lot of us have really tried to work on this. Let's talk a little bit about it and we'll close out. But what helps you have meaningful prayer? So what are kind of the different things you do, the different places you go, the different conversations you have to take your prayers deeper? Anybody want to share? Oh, yeah, do it.
Yeah, I love going like to some like roof of parking deck, like up onto some like hiking trail. Like I want to just get somewhere high up in the air where I can see a lot of stuff. And I don't know. I don't know if it's, you know, just appreciating how much God really did because you can see so much of it, or if it's more just there's something about feeling like you're kind of like God's not like above us literally, but you kind of feel like you're closer to Him when you get higher up. But I don't know. It's a really good spot for reflection and for being able to really get what you want to say out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's escaping and finding your own spot. Like to go pray is so important. So many of us try to pray when someone else is there or when we're surrounded by people, and it's so hard to focus. So getting away, I love doing this while it's going down the river behind my house, going on top of a parking deck. One time even, I went up on top of a parking deck over on the west side, and I was just on the top, kind of on the rails, just kind of praying, and a cop came up, not to downplay the intensity of suicide, but he, get down now. Wait, why? What are you doing? I'm praying. No, you're not. Bro, life is important, man. I know, that's why I'm praying. Just come down. It's okay, man. People love you. I know God loves me. That's why I'm praying. There's no way you're praying like that. But so hopefully it doesn't always lead to that, right? But getting away is so important to pray. Okay, what else? Chase.
I think it's being real where you're at in life and not trying to hide yourself from God. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to admit that I'm wrong all the time, or that I need it, or that I need help. And so just being able to take yourself to that place where you're like, okay, maybe I don't have it all together, and maybe I think I know what I'm doing, but I really don't. And not being fake, and just being vulnerable.
If you're with a very trusted friend, and some of us don't have this yet, and I encourage you, there's a friend in here that wants to know who you are, like for real. Not like a fake version of you, not like a good Christian version of you, but wants to know who you really are. Yeah. But if you have a very trusted friend like that, and you were being honest, man, I just really don't know what's going on in life right now. Man, this is going on, man, I feel terrible. Like, who am I becoming? Like, like a real conversation. God wants to hear those things. God wants to have that kind of conversation. And so many of us are out of practice with going there with God, so we don't get help with the deeper things from Him, because we don't show Him the deeper things. Appreciate you sharing that. Let's see. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes, like, when you feel like you can't really express how you're feeling in that moment, I know for me, I like to pray in tongues or like worship in the beginning so that my heart is open, so whatever I need to say to God just flows out of me, because sometimes I'm not able to communicate that with God, but the Holy Spirit is there to help me, and through my utterances, God understands what's going on, and then in that moment, He's speaking to me because He's understanding the utterances that I'm giving up to Him.
Yeah, so it's so important when we're praying to God, like in John 4, where Jesus tells the woman at the well, like, you will worship me in spirit and in truth, right? Where we really want to figure out what it means to worship God in spirit and give Him our whole heart, but we want to make sure it's combined with the truth, or we're really connecting and balancing those things and figuring out how to pray. Okay, that's, yeah.
Something that's been helping me recently is just like, right before starting to pray, sitting down thinking like, okay, what are all the things I'm about to tell God I want? Like, what are those things that are going to actually like motivate me to go deeper with God? What are the things where maybe I should think about, okay, this isn't going to help, but like what's something related to that could? And I find it surprisingly also helps me get really fired up for the prayer, which seems like helps with going deeper as well. Surprisingly, you know, talking to a friend, yeah, why would being passionate about that make the relationship deeper?
Right. I love it. Yes.
I like listening to music.
Say it nice and loud.
I like listening to music. Like, I listen to water soundtracks or like actual like gospel songs. Because I know sometimes if I like had to work that day, or just if I'm just in a mood, I'm not necessarily. I don't think I'm like ready to bring myself before God, and I don't think I want to like do that and like just bring my baggage from the world, like, you know. So I'm just like, I want to be at peace when I like bring myself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Music's good.
using worship is so helpful, right? And then using different types of worship is very helpful. Honestly, I knew very little gospel until I married my black queen. You know what I'm saying? And now worship takes me, like gospel worship takes me so much deeper, you know?
But you know,
But,
sing that song.
Jesus, the offense. Hey, is that what you were talking about? Go ahead.
What helps me get deeper with my prayer is when I start interceding for people, praying for other the people around me, and then like, because sometimes I guess I forget about the problems I have. Then when I pray about things I've noticed around me, or just the problems the world has, I'm reminded of my own problems, and then the prayer goes for a very lengthy time, because you will never run out of things to pray for, especially in the world we live in today. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And so we're going to cut here so we don't go too long. But this whole time we've been talking about adventure. And it doesn't sound like this great, huge piece of adventure. Like, it doesn't sound like Lord of the Rings, like epic battles when you go to pray. Yet, none of the other things would happen without the small building block of prayer. None of John Wooden's 10 championship teams would have happened if they didn't want to have tighter shoes. Like, it's that simple. It's that basic. And you'll never have those great, huge things that happen in the far reaches of the adventure of God without the personal adventure of God in prayer. And so, Ren, work on your prayer life this week. Maybe you want to try a different position, right? Where you get down on your knees, you lay down flat, you lift your hands up, you curl. You want to walk, right? You sit down where it's maybe you want to try a position. Maybe you want to try worship, right? Where you got different kinds of music. And if you like one type of music, maybe listen to another one. That might really help you. Maybe pray about something, make a list of things you've never prayed about before. And it's take 3 or 4 at a time, kind of each day. And pray about something you never prayed about before and learn to talk to God about it. Maybe ask someone else, hey, what do you think I could grow in my prayer life? And really listen to what helps them and what you can grow. But my encouragement, and maybe I think the thing that honestly helped me most is making it consistent. For Daniel, it was 3 times together. If you go look at it, he said he went and prayed 3 times a day as he had done before. And he had built this habit that was a part of his life, that every single day, no matter what, that his relationship with God and the adventure of God always happened. And build that habit of just 10 minutes a day, I'm going to pray. 20 minutes a day, I'm going to pray. 30 minutes, whatever it is. You get that in, you'll start to see incredible things happen in your adventure with God. You get that in, you start to see incredible and amazing, impossible things happen in your life. Man, in 2020, if we want to have the greatest adventure, the greatest 2020 of all time, it's going to start with the adventure of God. It's going to start with the very basic, but so essential, praying to God. Amen?